Better biking with survival skills.
Just how do motorcycles get round a corner? In this 60-second safety counter-steering special, I'll be looking at how two-wheelers steer. The motorcycle was invented well over 100 years ago. This Victoria KR1 dates from the early 1920s. Yet here we are in 2022 and there is still debate and even confusion amongst riders about just how we make a bike change direction. I thought I'd covered the topic of countersteering adequately in 60-second safety number 46. Run on two wheels, cyclist, scooterist, motorcyclist, countersteers to get round corners, and it's remarkably easy. But when a new YouTube video started doing the rounds a couple of days ago, I thought a rather longer explanation might be a good idea. Let's start with two basic principles that we need to understand. One, in order to balance the forces generated when a single-track vehicle like a motorcycle changes direction, the bike and rider have to lean in the direction the bike is turning. The more the lean angle, the tighter the bike will turn at the same speed. Two, in order to move the bike from the upright position where it goes straight on to the lean angle that gets us travelling in a curved path, we need to generate what's known as roll. The quicker the bike rolls, the sooner we get to our chosen lean angle. So, how do we make the bike roll? Whether we ride a sports bike or a cruiser, the answer's the same. We move the handlebars. The term the vast majority of us will be familiar with is countersteering. I first heard about countersteering soon after I started riding in 1975, but the first description I know of is older, much older. It goes all the way back to the early 1900s, and an article written by Wilbur Wright, one of the brothers better known for making the first flight. Wilbur and Orville owned a bicycle shop, and Wilbur was fascinated by the problem of making a bicycle steer, and he wrote, "I've asked dozens of bicycle riders how they turn to the left. I have never found a single person who stated all the facts correctly when first asked. They almost invariably said that to turn to the left, they turned the handlebar to the left, and as a result made a turn to the left. But on further questioning them, some would agree that they first turned the handlebar a little to the right, and then as the machine inclined to the left, they turned the handlebar to the left, and as a result made the circle inclining inwardly." Motorcycles steer exactly the same way, as this clip from the UK's West Midlands Bike Safe team explained almost 100 years later.
In order to turn the bike effectively, we need to countersteer the machine. That means to turn the bars the opposite way to which you want to go. Countersteering is a subtle nudge of the bars in the opposite direction to which you want to turn in order to get the bike turned off the vertical. It doesn't require much effort. So in order to turn right, we push the bars to the left. If you want to turn left, then we push the bars slightly to the right. It doesn't require much effort, so don't push them too hard.
That's not the clearest description I've ever heard. Easier to remember is push right, go right, and push left, go left. Now, if this was a simple world, we could leave it there and everyone would understand countersteering. But of course, people love to make things more complicated. The first time I heard the term positive steering was from US rider coach Keith Code. Code likes to invent new terms for old ideas, and his positive steering was the familiar push left, push right, go right technique. He just gave it a different name. Positive steering arrived in the UK when Andy Ibbott, the former superbike racer running the UK branch of Code's Superbike School, gave a demo of positive steering to the UK's Driving Standards Agency. That was sometime in the mid-2000s. The DSA had struggled for years with the idea that there's such a thing as countersteering, but having had the proof from an acceptable source, they adopted the terminology and also called countersteering positive steering. In 2009, the term positive steering appeared in the Institute of Advanced Motorists' Bike Handbook, How to Be a Better Rider, the Essential Guide. The authors said, for a motorcycle to get round a corner or bend, there needs to be some positive input from the rider. In view of this, and to avoid possible confusion, we will describe that input as positive steering. And then they explained that the rider needs to put a forward steering input into the handlebars on that side that he or she intends to turn. To turn right, the rider needs to push forward on the right handlebar. This will cause the bike to lean to the right and enable it to negotiate the bend. It's countersteering, pure and simple. I said at the time that it was simpler to stick with countersteering as a term that most riders were familiar with to avoid confusion. It seems I was right. A couple of days ago I was alerted to a video aimed at riders wanting to pass the advanced motorcycle test, where the person producing the video claimed he was sometimes using what he called positive steering, but he claimed when he was positive steering he was actually turning the bars into the bend, the opposite of countersteering. In essence, he was making the same claim as those cyclists Wilbur Wright was talking to over a century ago. If, as seems likely, he picked up the term from the IAM's own book, it seems he has completely misunderstood it. The video claimed that he could steer directly into the bends because he was leaning his body into the corner. Here's a second clip from the West Midlands Bike Safe video talking about the benefits of leaning into bends.
The easiest way to think about doing that is to drop your shoulder into the turn, look through the turn by pointing your nose through the corner and point your elbow towards the road that you're going to bank at. That will have the effect of turning the bike off the vertical into a bank position.
But the Bike Safe explanation of steering is still based on counter steering. Leaning in is just about making counter steering easier. So how is it that riders believe that they don't need to counter steer and that leaning into the corner is enough to get round a bend? The answer is simple. By leaning into the turn, we're putting pressure on the inside handlebar. That causes it to rotate away from ourselves. If we lean into a left-hander, the pressure on the left handlebar causes it to move forward. So, in short, riders who think they lean in to steer are unwittingly counter-steering. They just haven't realised it.